Hi there, smart drivers. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you tonight about obstructions on the roadway, which you have to get around safely and for the purposes of a road test. So we're going to tell you how to do that correctly. I have 8 points, 8 different types of obstructions that I'm going to talk about tonight, filtered in with obviously answering questions about passing road tests and being successful on a road test and doing that. So I look a little washed out here, so just bear with me here. I'm just going to adjust the camera while we get going here. So I don't know what it is. Advanced. There we go. So what do we need? Saturation. So we're just going to bump that up a little bit. There we go. Okay, so I should look a little bit better there in terms of the saturation and the color and whatnot. So elevators is here. Hi there. And we've had a lot of people pass the road test. And as well, last week we unofficially launched the 100,000K campaign. The 100,000K campaign is going to help 100,000 drivers. It's our goal here at Smart Drive Test to help 100,000 drivers in the next year to pass their road test. And we have a campaign over at the Smart Drive Test website, and Corey will put the link up for you here. Corey is Bricks for Wheels, and Corey is the moderator and does a really awesome job at keeping out the spammers and whatnot. So Corey's here, Edgar's here, Jim is here, Anita's here, and video and audio are working. That's tremendous. Thanks, Corey. So the 100,000K campaign is our move to help 100,000 drivers earn their license in the next year, whether that is CDL license, passenger vehicle license, motorcycle, whatever class of license, air brakes and whatnot. So people who have registered. Actually, it's been off to kind of a slow start, Jim. We're kind of working out a few bugs with the program over at the Smart Drive Test website, so I think we're still less than 20. So we're pushing it, and I haven't really done a lot of advertising and promotion on Facebook and those types of things. That's the other thing that I'm going to start doing once we get the bugs worked out on the program. As well, I may have misled some smart drivers last week. You can make a donation on the page over at the Smart Drive Test website, and I may have misled you that all of that money was going to go to charity. Not all of the money is going to go to charity, but a large portion of it, more than half of it, is going to go to charity. We do need some to run administration and keep the lights on and whatnot. So probably about 50-60% of it's going to go to charity, and we'll work those numbers out. Now, the other thing that I failed to mention as well is that everybody that lets us know that they passed their road test is going to, everybody, because I'll figure out the country where you're in, and I'll figure out a fuel station. So everybody is going to be entered in a draw, and once a month we're going to draw for a $100 fuel card. So everybody who passes the road test, everybody who lets us know, is going to be entered in a draw for a $100 fuel card. So we're going to let you know on that as well. And yes, if you notice that my eye is a little, got some red in it, I broke a blood vessel in my eye, probably from doing hard labor while I was home on holidays this week in Ontario. So that's what's going on with my eye here, if you think that my eye is a little messed up, and it is. I can see that here on the camera. So we're going to talk about obstructions tonight. We're going to talk about how to get around those safely. We're going to talk about how to do that defensively. And we're going to talk about how to do that for the purposes of a road test, because I have had a couple of smart drivers ask me in the last week or so how to get around transit buses, and if I have any videos on that. And I don't have any videos on that, but I will definitely put them on the list, and I will get that done, get videos on how to go around them. But there is a video here, and I put a link to it on how to change lanes and how to get around obstructions and how to do that safely. Essentially, it's getting around an obstruction while you're driving and moving and changing lanes. It's the same technique, same skills, same abilities that you do, or same procedures rather, that you do to change lanes. You have to mirror signal, shoulder check. You have to make sure that the way is clear. Signal, communicate your intentions, observe what other traffic is doing, and you need to move over lanes completely, and then you need to signal back when you do that. So that's what you need to do, and there's a video here on that. So Corey just put up the link there for the 100,000K campaign that we're running. So if you passed a road test in the last week and you have been successful, head over there, let us know. You don't have to make a donation. You just have to click the link and say thank you and lets us know and adds you to the campaign. And then if you want to leave a comment, that helps us out as well. It's all really great. So Jim, yes, I'm still uploading videos. I just haven't uploaded a video in a couple of months because I've been busy with another enterprise. I started another business with a business partner, and I've been kind of involved in that heavily, but I've been doing my live streams. But by the end of September, I'm going to get back making videos again. I'm going to start uploading videos again. So we're going to do that. So stay tuned for that. We're going to definitely do that. So Felicia's here. Gurdeep is here. And just let me know where you're tuning in from, where in the world you are, and that way it can help you out with different questions and those types of things. So different people, different places in the world, and just let me know where you are. And if you're watching on the replay as well, let us know down in the comments there where you're tuning in from. If you have any questions at all, ask me questions. I can help you out to be successful on CDL license, air brakes, and motorcycles, cars, any class of license. So as well, if you're watching on the replay, you like what you see here, be sure to subscribe, be sure to hit that thumbs up button and leave a comment and share the videos. So Jim, this week's video, we're talking about obstructions on the roadway and how to get around those safely. So essentially, I have 8 points that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about transit buses, pedestrians, vehicles that are double parked or other obstructions along the roadway, trees. Sometimes you'll be driving on residential roads and they'll deviate with the curb out into your lane. We'll talk about emergency vehicles, construction, flaggers and police and other personnel that may be directing traffic and how you deal with that on the roadway. We'll talk about crashes that you may have to get around, and then finally congestion as well, because in the course of your driving career, you're going to come across congestion, whether that's in a large city or that's a backup on a freeway because there's an animal or something else on the freeway, or it's just rush hour or something has happened. So there's a lot of different reasons why you can have obstructions on the roadway, and you're going to have to safely move around them. Now, a lot of smart drivers are preparing for a road test, and they're specifically getting behind transit buses. If you're in Toronto, Ontario, or Melbourne, Australia, you're going to get behind trams and trolleys, and those other cities in the world are going to have those as well. So you're going to have to safely get around these vehicles. And again, it comes back to the 4 fundamental components of driving, defensive driving, and preparing for road test: observation, communication, speed management, and space management. Those are the 4 fundamental components. So Mike is here, and he is from Ontario, Canada. And I just got back from Ontario. So that's why it's been postponed as well. I just got back from Ontario, and I'm a little bit jet lagged and feeling like it's 9 o'clock at night. So there we go. Thanks. And Tim over at Basic Joomla Tutorials, he's also got a YouTube channel. Yeah, and Mike let us know there on the 100,000K campaign that he passed his road test. So congratulations to Mike, and congratulations to everybody else who's passed the road test. So obstructions. So let's talk about the first thing about transit buses. Okay, so if you're driving in a larger urban center and you're taking your road test, I stress to smart drivers to practice in and around the test center where you're going to be taking your test. And major roads are all going to have buses on them, and you may end up behind a transit bus. Now, you need to observe traffic patterns, and you need to know that you are behind a transit bus. Most transit bus stops are 100 meters from an intersection on the far side of the intersection. So that information about knowing the position of where transit bus stops are, transit bus stops are not on this side of the intersection. They're never before the intersection. Transit bus stops, for the most part, are always on the far side of the intersection, and know that they're 100 meters from the intersection, and that is for purposes of safety. Now, in larger urban centers, Toronto, Chicago, New York, and other places like that that do have buses, they're going to, for the most part, on major thoroughfares, they're going to have a bus bay where the bus pulls into. So they're not going to obstruct traffic, because for the most part, the transit system is designed to facilitate traffic flow within the city. Now, smaller urban centers, So like where I live in Vernon, British Columbia, we're going to get buses that are going to be in traffic. They're going to stop in traffic and they're going to hold up traffic. What you need to do as the smart driver, especially when you're on your road test, is you need to know that transit bus is there. You need to know that there's a good chance that the transit bus can stop on the far side of the intersection. So if you see a transit bus in front of you and you're following it and you're in the right hand lane, because that's where you need to be for the purposes of your road test, what you need to do is you need to know that eventually that transit bus is going to stop to either alight or take on passengers. Alight. Yes, alight. Let off passengers. So what you need to do is you simply need to change lanes. And sometimes you can change lanes proactively before the bus actually stops and get around the bus. And of course, this is going to be up to you as the discretionary, because sometimes you're going to do it a little early and sometimes you're not going to, the bus isn't going to stop. So unfortunately, there's no hard and fast answer about how to get around a transit bus. But when you do change lanes, do all the mirror signal shoulder check, make sure there's an opening, and then move over into the other lane and get around the slow moving vehicle. Okay? So we have another one, Noreen Witter, who passed a test. There we go. And she said, your videos are what helped me pass my road test. Excellent. There we go. So awesome. And Two Phones is here. I live in Vancouver, British Columbia, so not too far from where I am. And Jasmine, there we go, is here. Mike, I passed my G2 test today and largely due to watching your videos. Very helpful. Thank you so much, Mike. That's great for letting us know and really helpful. And Jim is here, and Jim is in Las Vegas. So they're in random areas where I am. So Two Phones, you hit an animal last week. You hit a crow. Did anything other than just scaring the bejesus out of you. Scaring the tar out of you, I guess we'll try and say that in a nice way. So everything, were you okay, Jim, or was and did something happen out of that? There we go. And awesome. Ali Saeed also passed his road test, so that's really great, and let us know on the 100,000 campaign. So, okay, so number one was transit buses. The second one is pedestrians, and pedestrians are a little trickier because if they're in a pedestrian crossing and you're on a road test, you need to wait until there is a space of one lane of traffic between you and the pedestrian before you proceed. For the purposes of a road test for pedestrians, you want a buffer of one lane of traffic. And the reason for that on a road test is because there may be small children with an adult crossing the roadway at a pedestrian crossing, or the pedestrian may get halfway across the lane and decide that they forgot something and head back. So what's going to happen is, for the purposes of safety, examiners want to see one lane of traffic between you and the pedestrian. Now, after you get your license, you want a good distance of space between you and the pedestrian before you proceed, and just keep an eye on the pedestrian. Now, the other obstruction that you're going to encounter with pedestrians is a lot of times they're going to be jaywalking, particularly in bigger urban centers and in urban centers where there's going to be a lot of pedestrian traffic. So know that. And if you're in areas and you're driving in areas and taking your test where there is a high concentration of pedestrian traffic, know that you can slow down for the purposes of pedestrians and let them go and proceed across the roadway. So know that when pedestrians are crossing the roadway. All right, so Farah is in Kelowna. Does driving on the non-high occupant vehicle lane help transit buses? Can you do this for the purposes of the road test? You just said you have to be on the right furthest lane though. Now, Farah, Kelowna is a little bit different because they have the right-hand lane as the HOV lane, the high occupancy vehicle lane. So for you, Farah, there in Kelowna, you want to be in the center lane when you're driving straight through. Unless you're turning right, you want to be in that center lane. And this goes for other people who are taking the road test in an urban area where they're on 3 lanes of traffic. You want to be in that center lane. That is your best defensive position to drive in, is the center lane if there's 3 or more lanes. Because the right-hand turning lanes, or the right lane is going to have right-hand turning lanes in it, and as Farah said, they're going to have transit buses and other slower vehicles and those types of things. So you want to be in the center lane. And if you're turning left, then you'll need to get into the left-hand lane. But that's basically it. Okay. So there we go. And Shanice, if you could head over to the Smart Drive Test website and add your name to the 100,000K campaign, that would be really great and help us out to reach our goal in the next year of helping 100,000 drivers to pass the road test. There's great. Jasmine, I have, how much space do you need to be away from other vehicles? So Jasmine, the purposes of space management for a road test, you need to stop at the correct position on a stop signed intersection before the stop line, before the crosswalk line or sidewalk, or where the two roads meet. As well, you need to follow other vehicles at a 2 to 3 second following distance under ideal conditions. And as well, Corey will get the video up for you on following distance and how far away from other vehicles you need to be. When you stop in traffic, Jasmine, you want to stop behind the vehicle in front of you so that you can see the tires of that vehicle making clear contact with the pavement. So that's space management in terms of being successful on a road test, okay? So there we go. Excellent. So Shanice passed her road test yesterday and the videos were helpful. That's really great. Congratulations on that, on passing your road test and being successful. There we go. Epic is here. Watch video, and today I have a problem where the stop line was obstructed by another vehicle. Do you have any tips how to determine the stop line when there is a vehicle in front? T-junction, left side blocked. So T-junction, left side blocked. So essentially what you need to do, Epic, instead of looking down at the roadway, look farther ahead, especially as you're approaching the intersection and the other vehicle is approaching the intersection. And generally you can see those big stop lines because oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes those large stop lines are accompanied by crosswalk lines in front as well. So have a look for that and you can see that and you'll be able to see that line. I know that sometimes it is obstructed by other vehicles, but if you look farther down the road as you're approaching the intersection, you'll be able to find that stop line. All right. Okay. Farah, so after taking a right turn on the road test, you should make a lane change after. You should tell your examiner first, right? No, Farah, you don't have to tell your examiner. So if you come out onto Highway 97 there in Kelowna, where it's 3 lanes, and you make a right-hand turn, you're in that high occupancy vehicle lane, you can just move over to the left lane, that center lane, and drive in that center lane until the examiner either tells you to move left or right, because he or she is going to tell you to turn left or right, and they'll give you good notice. Examiners will give you a couple of blocks before you have to turn left or right, and if they tell you to turn left or right, then just move back into the lane that they told you to turn. So if they tell you to turn right, then just move back into the right-hand lane, and if they tell you to turn left, just move into the left-hand lane. And that's the same for other people who are driving on large urban roads that are more than 3 lanes. Drive in the center lane if you're traveling straight through, and if the examiner tells you to turn right or turn left, then just move into the appropriate lane for that purposes of that. All right, so 2 phones. This sounds kind of random, but I couldn't tell whether the bird was suicidal because it was already on the road, and has tried my best to slow down and dodge the crow. It just jumped in front of the car. Yeah, and unfortunately, sometimes 2 phones that happens. It is a little bit weird. So yeah, you've seen some videos where birds have done that, but that's another topic. Yeah, and we can do a whole topic live stream on animals on the roadway, so we'll put that in the back burner. So Jaden is here. I have a question. Do local schools do driver ed courses? When you say local schools, Jaden, are you talking about driver ed schools, or like vocational schools, or are you talking about public schools like high schools and elementary schools and whatnot? Just let me know there in the comments. All right, so number 4, so we talked about transit buses as an obstruction, pedestrians, parked cars. So essentially parked cars, and I kind of said this at the introduction, that you need to change lanes. You need to move into the other lane, and you need to mirror signal shoulder check. You need to move over into the other lane, and then you need to mirror signal shoulder check, and you need to move back. You need to do that for the purposes of the road test and being safe, because again, we come back to speed management, space management, observation, and communication in terms of defensive driving. All right, so that's double parked cars, obstructions on the roadway, the curb comes out, or there's some other obstruction and whatnot. Speed bumps are another thing that are going to be obstructions on the roadway, and you're going to have to slow down and proceed over those. And you want to try and get off the brakes as you're going over the large bump because it's just easier on your vehicle. All right, so Jaden talks about public schools. Some public schools do driver education, but for the most part, most of this driver education, particularly in North America, has been handed off to vocational schools like driver ed schools. Not so much, but certainly let me know, smart drivers there, if you are in a place where they do offer driver education in a public school. I know that there are some schools, private schools and whatnot. I had a smart driver some months ago tell me that in Hershey, Pennsylvania, which is the chocolate town, he was at a private school and they did offer driver education at the private school. So it does happen. And as well, if you do have it in your public school, just let me know here. If you're watching on the replay as well, let me know that you have driver education in your school, and that'll help us out. Okay. Okay, so here we go. Okay, Jasmine, you are most welcome. Okay, so defensive driving and Jaden. Okay, so we answered that. And Jasmine, you're nervous about your written test and passing. And Jasmine, I don't know whether you've seen the video on your theory test or your knowledge test yet, but Corey will get the video for you and that'll put that up for you. So how do you Edgar, how do you join the driver website? So Corey put the link up here. Just scroll up there, Edgar, and go up to basic Joomla tutorials, and he's got the link there that you can click to head over to the Smart Drive Test website and contribute to the 100,000K campaign if you've been successful on your road test. Okay, so we talked about double parking, obstructions, trees, those types of things. Next thing, we're going to talk about emergency vehicles, and there is a video here on the channel about emergency vehicles. And for the purposes of a road test, you must stop when there is an emergency vehicle present, whether that's an ambulance, police, fire, or search and rescue. If you do not stop on a road test for an emergency vehicle, that is an automatic fail on a road test. It is the same thing as speeding in a school zone. It is an automatic failure on a road test. So know that if an emergency vehicle appears when you're on your road test, find where that emergency vehicle is and bring your vehicle to a stop immediately. And you don't always have to pull over to the right shoulder if you're driving on the right-hand side of the road, but sometimes you will have to move over to the left if that's the farthest, if that's the closest place to go to clear a path for the emergency vehicle. As well, if you're sitting at an intersection, you may have to turn the intersection to clear the way for the emergency vehicle. If you're in a roundabout, you may have to go through the roundabout and then pull over to get out of the way of emergency vehicles. Now, one other thing I will say about emergency vehicles, know that oftentimes they travel in groups. So first the fire truck will come out and then the ambulance will come out, or vice versa. The police will come out and then the fire truck will come out. So know that they travel in groups, okay? And know that you need to stop immediately for the purposes of a road test. If you come up on a police cruiser, here in British Columbia, we have the move over laws now, and they have somebody pulled over and the lights are flashing on the side of the road. If it's a highway, you need to slow to 70 kilometers an hour and move over to the left as far as possible if they're on the right-hand side of the road. If you're in a town or city, you need to slow down, I think it's to 40 kilometers an hour, and you need to move over, so know that. Okay, so there we go. Farah. Okay, sorry, I'll just keep going back here a little bit and then I'll catch up. Jim, back a long time ago, schools used to have driving instructors. Yes, Jim, they did. They had a lot of driving instructors. Most of the driving instruction and driver education was part of the public education curriculum. Unfortunately, it became more feasible for that to be handed off to private vocational schools because it proved that there just wasn't enough money return in it, and it was costing the government a lot of money. So they handed that off to the private sector. Okay, Farah, what is your advice on school zones where the 30 speed sign is right at the beginning of the street, which you might miss directly after turn? Okay, so Farah, this comes back to practicing in and around the area where you're going to be taking your test and knowing exactly where the schools are. The other thing that's going to help you with that Farah, is to go on Google Maps and locate the schools in and around, especially for you there in Kelowna, the ICBC Center, and where the ICBC Center is and what schools are there. Know that you're going to go out about 10 minutes and then you're going to come back about 10 minutes. So however far you can drive, out 10 minutes and then come back 10 minutes. So it's not going to be very many schools, 3 or 4 at the most. And know that you're only going to pass 1 or 2 of them. So if you're practicing in and around that area, Farah, you're going to be okay on that. Jaden, also have another question. When I have a job, do I ride my bike to work or drive my car to work? Well, Jaden, that comes down to a personal preference. Me personally, I would ride my bicycle to work, but if it's beyond your ability to ride to work, then you might want to drive your car. But that's up to you. I mean, and then you could alternate. A couple of days a week you could ride your bicycle, and a couple of days a week you could drive your car. So Corey's put the video up there on emergency vehicles. Celia, I have a question. I am taking my road test and I'm about to make a right turn and the light is green. Do I need to make a quick stop? Celia, no, you do not need to make a stop if the light is green, but you do need to shoulder check and you need to slow down to the appropriate speed and then simply proceed. So you don't have to come to a stop on a green light to make a right turn. Sean, hey, I've got a road test tomorrow at Red Hook, Brooklyn tomorrow. Kind of nervous with aiming to the right lane in turns. Any advice? Okay, so Sean, when you're making right turns in the right lane, get in that lane as soon as possible. Mirror signal shoulder check as you're approaching the intersection, approximately half a block away. You're going to come up, depending on whether the light's red or green. If the light's red, obviously you got to bring the vehicle to a stop at the correct position. You keep your signal on the entire time that you're stopped waiting. If it is a red light, if it's a green light, you simply scan the intersection, scan the crosswalk, make sure that there aren't any pedestrians or other road users and the way is clear. Because remember, green does not mean that you can go. A green light means you can go, you can proceed if the way is clear. If the way is not clear, you cannot proceed. Because again, we come back to that saying, the right of way is always given. It is never taken. So if another road user or pedestrian is in the crosswalk, you can't go. You need to give the right of way to them. And so if you come to a stop, you want a mirror signal shoulder check again immediately before making the turn. And then you're going to make the turn. You're going to look in the direction you want the vehicle to travel. Turn the steering wheel. Open your fingers. Just open your fingers. Keep your palms in contact with the steering wheel. Turn the steering wheel hand over hand for most places. Turn the corner and then come back. Open your fingers. Let the steering wheel come back. Correct. Look in the path of travel and bring the vehicle back up to the posted speed limit as quickly as possible. Ryan, working on getting my name added to the list of past road tests. Additionally, I would like the fundraiser for people with disabilities wears hampers to greet them to see. That's awesome. Yes, Ryan, we're definitely going to be donating some of the money to help people with disabilities get equipment so that they can drive. And also, if they need driving instruction, we're going to help with that. And I know for you, Ryan, you were working with the people at the, just remind me of the name of the hospital there in London. But anyway, the hospital, and they have a program there that does that. And we'll be getting in touch with them and seeing how we can make contributions. Okay, so there we go. Excellent. Okay, so obstruction, construction, and detours. And we're almost past the construction season now. Most of us are going into winter. We're going back into school. And construction is beginning to, it's not disappeared by any stretch of the imagination. There's still construction out there. The colors of the signs that designate a construction area or temporary hazards and obstructions, orange and black. The pylons are orange and black. The signs are orange and black. And there's often good advance warning of construction, and you need to pay attention to all of the pylons, all of the signs, because sometimes they're around holes in the road and huge bumps and those types of things. So make sure that you pay attention to construction, because you could end up in a big hole in your vehicle, which could be rather embarrassing. And so construction, simply slow down, follow the posted speed limits, the temporary signs that are in place, which are going to be orange and black. And now the other thing that you need to keep in mind with construction sites is in many places they're going to have flaggers, and we have them here in British Columbia. You need to obey the instructions of flaggers on the roadway, and as well know that flaggers are vulnerable road users. They are on the roadway, they are directing traffic, And I know that for some of you it's going to be frustrating because they're impeding your progress. They're slowing you down. They're causing congestion. They're backing up traffic. But you need to take a breath. You need to give them good space, stay away from them, and proceed when they give you direction to go, because they're out there, they're simply doing their job, and they're trying to facilitate as much as possible the flow of traffic through the construction zone. And it is frustrating, and I know that. And on that same note, in some places, and I did see this in Ontario when I came back, they were fixing the bridge, and they had one half of the bridge closed off, and what they do is they put a set of traffic lights up at each end of the bridge, and it alternates traffic through the bridge and through the construction zone. And that's another option that will happen for many people, for many construction areas. So know that as well, and know that again, the construction zone is going to be designated by orange and black signs, orange and black cones, and those types of things. Okay. And then, of course, that's going to lead into flaggers. And I said, as you must obey the obstructions or the directions of flaggers, and it's written into most highway traffic acts that you must. They have the same authority as police who are directing traffic, and oftentimes you're going to get in places where police are going to direct traffic as well, and you must obey the directions of police officers. And even if they're standing at a working traffic light, obey the directions of the police officer, not the traffic light. All right, so we'll just answer a couple questions here. Singh, it is important to hold the steering wheel with both hands. Yes, and you must have your both hands on the steering wheel for the duration of the road test. Okay, and when I say open your fingers to let the steering wheel come back, you simply open your fingers and keep your palms in contact with the steering wheel. And when the steering wheel stops spinning, simply close your fingers and carry on. Okay, Catching AZ, any advice on how to study the book and how can I make turns better? Cast and Reel, are you studying for a CDL license? Just let me know that. Michael Johnson, construction may almost be over, but this is when we get real burst because we are starting to do our last minute stuff. Yes, thank you for that, Michael. It gets really busy for sure. So just keep that in mind as we're heading into the fall with school and those types of things, that construction is going into its last burst and they're trying to get stuff finished up before winter and those types of things, okay? Elevators, also don't drive through construction zones. They may not be done. Yes. All about vehicles. How are you? Yes, I do use OBS and I find it quite good. And actually, I don't use OBS to its full potential. For those of you who don't know, OBS is a software. It's a broadcasting software which is an intermediate program that allows you to live stream on YouTube. So I do use OBS. I need to go on and watch some of Nick Niman's videos on how to improve my live streaming so I can give it a bit of flair and whatnot, because I know I don't have a lot of flair. Okay, so Jasmine, how do I pass driving school? So Jasmine, I think what you're asking me is how do you pass the driving test? And what I suggest is watch the videos here on my YouTube channel, practice the slow speed maneuvers, practice learning how to drive. Corey will get the playlist up for you on the slow speed maneuvers that you need to do for the purposes of the road test. And yes, you have to drive the vehicle down the road, you have to manage space, and you have to manage speed and those types of things. However, if you're having trouble with your overall driving, concentrate on the slow speed maneuvers, concentrate on the learning to drive video, because if you can do slow speed maneuvers well, 2-point reverse turn, 3-point turn, parallel parking, reverse stall parking, and whatnot, if you can do those well, that is going to improve your overall driving. So know that for the purposes of your road test, that if you practice the slow speed maneuvers, it's going to improve your overall driving. So work on that. Okay. Oh, excellent. All about vehicles. Keenan, yes, and thanks for reminding me. OBS has problems recently, and it's... yeah, actually, Keenan, I've found that OBS is pretty solid. Probably because I don't do all the transitions and those types of things, but I find it works pretty well. The issue that I had with live streaming when I initially started was I've got one of the Logitech cameras, and everybody else uses Logitech who's doing live streaming, but what happened with my Logitech is you got to download the gaming software to control the camera, to control the saturation and the white balance and all the other things, and you got to put it on manual focus. That's where I struggled, because I didn't struggle with OBS. I struggled with my Logitech camera. Once I downloaded that gaming software, then the Logitech camera wanted to work. All right. Okay, so you have OBS as well. Okay, Ryan, all right, I work with 3 different companies. Excellent. So, Ryan, so you're working with 3 different companies. So, Ryan, can you send me an email, rick@smartdrivetest.com, and just let me know those companies, and maybe you and I can have a conversation, and I can start to initiate who we can help out with the money that we're going to start having donated here, and get this all going. So that would be really great if you could help me out with that. Jasmine. Yes, I want to pass driving school because I want to pass. Yes. And so going back to your question, Jasmine, I kind of got sidetracked. Apologies. The other thing I'm going to say to you about passing your road test first time is do those slow speed maneuvers, and then in the days leading up to when you're going to be taking your road test, book a practice driving test with a local driving school. They'll go out with you, take you out for a 20-minute drive, and they'll assess your driving skills and your preparedness for a road test. And they'll come back and they'll tell you which of your skills need to be improved to be successful on a road test. So just know that for the purposes of passing a road test. And oftentimes, like Sam, who's often here, he's with Rookie Auto Driving School in Bronx in the city of New York. They only charge about $20 for a practice driving test, so it's money well spent. And I do encourage all smart drivers who are preparing for a road test, book a practice driving test with a driving school, and that will help you out. Okay? And if you're watching on the replay, if you like what you see here, hit that thumbs up button as well. If you're new to Smart Drive Test helps new drivers get a license, veteran drivers to remain crash free, and CDL drivers to start a career as a truck or bus driver. So consider subscribing and consider sharing and leaving a comment. All of that helps us out and helps us to help all the smart drivers out there get their license. So just back to a question here. Okay, Jasmine, I'm scared and nervous. And yes, and Jasmine, what I would suggest is have a look at the video on fear and anxiety, and that will give you some strategies to put in place that will help you overcome that anxiety. Lots of people have anxiety around tests. It's nothing new. So just remember to breathe. Remember to say, I can do this, and you can do this, and you can, you can overcome this anxiety. Know that if you got anxiety, that's a good thing, because it's going to keep you sharp and it's going to keep you learning skills that will keep you safe on the roadway. Okay, Joe, I'm a new Class 1 driver. I couldn't figure out how to float the gears in the 10-speed or 18-speed because I couldn't slip into neutral without tapping the clutch. Any tips? Joe, you don't have to float the gears. If you're more comfortable using the clutch, then just use the clutch. And I'm going to say that the better you get using the clutch, the easier it's going to be to float the gears, and it'll just come to you naturally. But 2 reasons, Joe, that I advocate using the clutch. One, when I was driving truck, I never had my own truck. I was a company driver, and I was always in different trucks all the time, like every 2 or 3 days, sometimes it seemed. As well, I did a lot of work for personnel agencies, so I was working for different companies as a fill-in driver a lot of the times. So I was always in different trucks. When you use the clutch, it's a lot easier to move between trucks because the transmission tends to be a little bit more forgiving when you're using the clutch. So it's a lot easier. If you're a new driver, you may find it easier just to use the clutch for a few months, and then after you get used to that and you get used to how the truck sounds and those types of things, you can stop using clutch and just float the gears. So know that. And as well, you're just going to have to, get used to the throttle, and you'll sort it out eventually. But I just might advocate that you just use the clutch for a couple more months and then carry on from there. Okay. Juhar, I'm a driving instructor in California. Enjoy your no-nonsense approach. Juhar, I hope I'm saying that right. Apologize for that, but thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay, so Ryan, sure. Email Rick at smartdrivetest.com, and you can just, and we'll get going from there. I really appreciate that. Sing, the campaign, the 100,000K campaign, we're working to help 100,000 drivers, whether it's a motorcycle, passenger vehicle, bus or truck, or air brakes, help 100,000 drivers in the next year to get their license in the next year. So that's what the 100,000K campaign is. So 380, a bump of the accelerator was slided in and out of real nice. So yes, there you go. So that's another thing that you can do, Joe, is just tap the throttle, and a lot of times just getting the throttle, and you just get the tack in that sweet spot, and oftentimes the transmission will go into neutral nicely. Essentially what you need to do is you need to break the tension in the drivetrain. So you don't want any load on the drivetrain. So you either need to take your foot off the throttle, or you need to push the throttle down a little bit and then just release it. And as soon as you take the load off the drivetrain, so there's no power going through the drivetrain and you're not twisting the drive shaft, oftentimes the gear selector will just go into neutral in a non-synchro mesh. And then you either have to throttle up if you're shifting down, or you need to give it, or you need to let off the throttle if you're shifting up. So it's just basically ba-dump and pause in neutral. And it's going to depend on the truck that you're in. Sometimes that shift when you're shifting up is going to be really fast, or sometimes it's going to be really slow. Depending on the truck, it's going to be ba-dump. Okay, so you're going to be able to figure that out in different vehicles. Okay, so Ryan there, Corey put the email address up for you there. There you go. Yeah, so exactly what 380 said there, that yeah, it takes the resistance pressure off the engine off the gears. So the gears aren't under load like this. They're kind of floating together like this, and I think that's why they call it floating the gears rather. Okay, Farah, what do you think is an important difference between taking the road test in the summer and then retaking in August? Farah, I don't think there's really much difference. I mean, other than the fact that in October there may be some sub-zero temperatures that you may encounter. So what I mean by sub-zero is that it could be below freezing, and you could potentially excuse me, have some ice on the road. So just take note of that in the morning before you go out for your test, what the temperature is outside and whether there has been any precipitation overnight, and potentially there could be ice on the roadway. So take note of that as well. Yasina, I have a quick question. When backing on a straight line along the curb, is it okay to have one hand on the steering wheel? Yes, Yasina, because essentially what they want you to do for the purposes of backing up along the curb, they want you to be looking out the back window of the vehicle. So when you're looking out the back window of the vehicle, you're going to put your right hand on the back of the passenger seat, and you're going to steer with your other vehicle. Okay, there we go. Okay, Ryan, Jim, I want to ride a motorcycle, but my aunt doesn't want me to ride one. Yes, and I can understand her reluctance to let you ride a motorcycle, Jim, because you are 35 times more likely to be killed on a motorcycle. As my friend Alex says, who's an avid motorcycle rider, said in an interview, there are no fender benders on a motorcycle. So one of the things that I do recommend to you, Jim, and I recommend this to all people who are going to get a motorcycle license or plan on riding a motorcycle, is motorcycles are one vehicle that I do really advocate that you take a course for. If you're going to get your motorcycle license, sign up and take a course. Ride your motorcycle around a parking lot, learn the skills, learn the abilities and techniques that you need to be safe on the roadway. And because, as they say, motorcycle riders will tell you, there are no fender benders on a motorcycle. If you get into a crash on a motorcycle, you are going to lose. So take a defensive driving course, learn advanced skills to keep yourself safe and to keep yourself in one piece and enjoy riding a motorcycle. So that's my little spiel on motorcycles. All right. Edgar, I am thinking about learning to drive manual, but I'm not sure since it seems very difficult. Should I learn? No, Edgar, you should definitely learn how to drive a standard transmission in a vehicle. I drive standard transmission. I love driving standard transmission. Actually, it's probably from my years of driving truck. But I feel that I have more control of the vehicle because I can shift to the appropriate gear as well. I like driving them in the wintertime. I feel I have much more control on snow and ice and compromised conditions than I do in an automatic. As well, marketing campaigns can tell you as much as they want that automatic transmissions get better fuel mileage than standard transmissions. I simply don't believe that. I think that's a bit of a conspiracy on the part of automotive companies. And as well, here in North America, interesting fact, we have about 80% automatic transmissions and 20% manual transmissions in North America. Now, if you go to Europe and other places in the world, it's completely reverse. It's 80% standard transmissions and 20% automatic transmissions. So if you're going to go somewhere else in the world and you're going to rent a car, there's a really good chance that you're going to end up having a standard transmission in that vehicle. So know that. It's a really good skill to have. Jasmine, you are most welcome. Biggity Boys, how do I know what speed to drive in a residential area? I'm taking my road test in 2 weeks. The speed limit, Biggity Boys, in town is 50 kilometers an hour or 30 miles an hour unless otherwise posted. The speed limit on highways is 80 kilometers an hour or 50 miles per hour unless otherwise posted. So if you don't see any speed signs, that's the speed that you need to drive. And that's a really great question. Okay? Now, if there are other speed signs, then you need to do that speed sign. Now, as I said, speed management is a major component of a road test. For the purposes of a road test, for speed management, you need to do either the posted speed limit, the flow of traffic, or the capability of the vehicle. If you're driving a bigger vehicle, a bus, an RV unit, or a truck, then whatever the truck can do, right? If you're going uphill, whichever the less of those. But that's for CDL drivers. But for you, posted speed limit, flow of traffic. If you're in a congested area with high pedestrian traffic, or you're in residential streets with lots of cars parked on either side of the roadway, then you can go a little bit slower. Not a lot slower, but a little bit slower. And again, Biggity Boys, what I suggest to you is if you're taking your road test in 2 weeks, go into the local driving school and book a practice driving test in the days before your test. That way you can have your skills assessed in the few days before you go for your road test and know exactly your preparedness for that road test. In other words, are you ready for that road test? And the driving instructor will give you some feedback. And those practice driving tests are fairly inexpensive. They're probably less than $50. As I said, Sam at Rookie Auto Driving School at the Bronx, they only charge $20 for one, and they might take you out for 10 or 15 minutes, but you know whether you're ready or not for your road test. All right. Jim, I did take a class, but I'm not able to practice because of my aunt. All right. Jim, how long was the class that you took for the motorcycle for the defensive driving course? I know here in British Columbia, they can either be a weekend or they can be like evenings for 5 days. So I don't know how long yours is there in, I believe you're in Las Vegas, if I remember correctly from the beginning. So yeah, again, if you're just tuning in, let us know where you are in the world. If you're watching on the replay, let us know where you are in the world. Leave a comment down, and all of that helps us out. So Sat Ann is in Siberia. More mechanical gears and trucks. 80% mechanical, 20% 20% robot. And what Sat Ann is meaning is that 80% of the vehicles are standard transmissions and 20% are automatic transmissions. So exactly what I was saying there too. Sing, can I overtake the cars in America like we usually do? No, there are specific rules for passing and changing lanes, and Corey will get those 2 videos up for you there, Sing, so you know how to do that safely and correctly here in Canada. And again, we're getting fairly busy on the live stream, so if you get a question and I don't get to your question, leave it down in the comments and I'll get back to you and I will definitely answer your question. It's not that I'm ignoring you, it's just that it's really busy and I try to get to everybody, but sometimes I do miss questions, okay? Farah, what are the top things you look for when buying a used car here in Canada? Okay, so Farah, one of the things that I suggest to new drivers and drivers that are not mechanically inclined is if you have a vehicle that you want to purchase, take it to a mechanic and get them to do an inspection of the vehicle. Generally, it will cost you about $100 for a mechanic to put the vehicle up on the hoist. They'll check the brakes, the tires, the other major components of the vehicle, and I highly recommend that to people to have that done. As well, the other thing that you want to do in terms of buying a vehicle that's a pre-owned vehicle, most places now will have a Carfax. It's a report of the vehicle from the time that it was purchased, and oftentimes they can pull those up and know whether the vehicle was involved in a crash Generally, you don't want to buy a vehicle that's been involved in a crash. Now, saying that, there are some vehicles that are called rebuilds, and essentially what happens is that they're damaged on the back. There's body damage like quarter panels or something like that, and the insurance company writes it off. And more often than not in this day and age, this is a little known fact by most people, is that insurance companies will write cars off that are not totaled. And it's pretty easy for a panel beater, what we call body people, people who fix vehicles when they've been in crashes, to put these back together, and they're still perfectly safe vehicles. And you can buy a rebuild for quite a bit less than you would a newer vehicle and get yourself a fairly good vehicle, because they've only been damaged on the back or whatnot. There isn't any damage to the engine or other components of the vehicle. So you can get a rebuild. That's another option that you can do. Now, what I was going to say about insurance companies is oftentimes insurance companies will write off a vehicle. In other words, they'll just pay you out for the vehicle and they'll buy it from you, because what happens is that the insurance company buys it from you, and then what they do is they part it out. So they sell the parts of the vehicle, and they can make a lot more money when they have 10,000 parts, and they can charge 500% of what they normally would for the vehicle. So that's why they write them off, because they can make more money on the vehicle when they part it out, as opposed to just fixing the vehicle or whatnot. So it's just a matter of economics in terms of what the insurance companies do. So, and the other thing that I would recommend, a Honda or a Toyota, either a Civic or a Corolla, or a small RAV4 or a CRV. Those are my recommendations. There are some other good ones, and Smart Drivers will give you other recommendations in terms of vehicles, but personally, Toyota or Honda are my recommendations for used vehicles. Okay, so there we go. Royal Rooter, they say about motorcycle fatality rates, motorcycle fatalities have risen more than any other subgroup of road users over the past 10 years. And yes, Royal Rooter, the other thing about motorcycles is that the people who tend to ride motorcycles are more prone to aggressive driving behaviors. Thus, they will accept higher risks. They will speed, they will cut in and out of traffic and those types of things. So just by that very fact, a lot of motorcycle riders tend to be at a higher risk of being involved in a crash. Now, saying that, there are a lot of motorcycle riders who are safe. They wear protective clothing, they wear high-vis clothing, they take care of their motorcycles, they ride defensively, they take classes, they're constantly doing professional development. So I can't lump all motorcycle riders into the same group, but generally overall they tend to be less adverse to risks. So know that about motorcycles as well. Okay, Sing, what costs for buying a vehicle or paying for a vehicle every month if I want to drive a car as a taxi? What do you recommend? If you want to drive a taxi, I don't know a lot about that, Sing, because I've been away from the taxi industry for a long time, but I do know that you need to rent one. So there you go. And there's some other facets of that as well. I wouldn't be able to give you good information about that. My apologies. Okay, Biggity Boys. Would 40 kilometers be okay in a residential area? I just feel like 50 is pretty high, especially when there are other cars parked everywhere alongside the road and there are lots of curves. So again, I can't say specifically, Biggity Boy, whether 40 kilometers an hour would be too slow. I might think that you kind of might be pushing it a little bit depending on where you are. What I would suggest you is to, again, go out and do a practice driving test with a driving instructor, and they'll be able to give you that specific information. Okay? Farah, thanks for all your tips. My car back home is a CRV Honda 1996. Yes, good car. My Honda CRV is a 1998, and it's great. Joe drives a 97 RAV4. And is a dirt road wizard. Excellent. Monette, hi, I'm always watching your videos, your YouTube, big help for me. Excellent. I'm glad we can help out, Monette. And where in the world are you? Michael says that Michael Johnson says that pickup truck drivers as well are higher risk drivers. So, Jim, I spent $1,500 worth of protective gear. Why is respraying your new car better than using the factory paint? I don't quite understand that question, Jim. Maybe you can rephrase that for me. What's a decent price for a used Honda or Toyota? There's a lot of factors that go into used vehicles, Farah. It depends what condition it is, how many miles are on it, what year it is, and where it's been driven, and those types of things. So I can't really give you a specific money about that. The best place to look, Farah, is to look on Google under reviews and those types of things, and that'll be able to give you the information for that. So Singh doesn't have a car. Yeah, that's a bit disappointing if you're working towards that. So, all right, excellent. So last two pieces for obstructions. We'll just talk about this quickly, and then we're going to wrap up here. The last one is crashes, and oftentimes you can come up on crashes, and they can be unexpected. There will be congestion. If you're the first one on the crash, I do suggest that you do help out in terms of a crash. Put out triangles and flares and those types of things. If professional drivers are there, they will do that. Emergency crews will arrive. If they're not there already, do call 911 and see if you can offer assistance and whatnot. But know that traffic is going to be congested. It will come to a stop. If you're at the back of the line and coming up on a crash or other congestion that's on the roadway, put your four-way flashers on to indicate to traffic behind you that you are stopped. And the flashing lights, again, will get their attention. So put on your flashing lights to warn other traffic that you have come to a stop and that you're not going to get rear-ended if you're at a crash site or congestion. Again, if there's congestion on a highway or a freeway, put your four-way flashers on immediately if there isn't traffic behind you. Once you get some traffic piled up behind you, then you're going to be okay because there's some buffer there. But do put your four-ways on and stay back from the vehicles in front of you. Don't just drive right up and be bumper to bumper. Stay back, put a couple of vehicle lengths. Yes, I know that people will pull in front of you and those types of things, but just let them go and have their crash somewhere else. It's better to have a bit of space between you and the other vehicles than to be right up on them. And, you know, you're kind of looking around and you're not really paying attention because you're in bumper to bumper traffic and you're going very slow. So you want to manage some space around your vehicle, and that way you're going to have a buffer of space. All right, so crashes and congestions are the last ones in terms of obstructions. So the 8 obstructions we talked about: transit buses, pedestrians, parked cars and other obstructions, emergency vehicles, construction, flaggers, crashes, and congestion. So we'll just finish up here. We'll answer a few questions. We'll just finish up. Okay, Corey said, depends on the road. If it's a small road where one lane is consumed by parked cars, this should be fine to go slower. However, for most otherwise, the tester may ding you. Yes, and you can get dinged on a road test for going too slow, so know that. JFSA 380, I just got a Ford Police Interceptor sedan. All-wheel drive is great. Thanks for the advice. Oh, you are most welcome, 380. Anything we can do to help out. Jim, is there a way I can own and ride a motorcycle without my aunt knowing? Potentially, you could move, Jim, away from your aunt or ride at night so she doesn't see you. Okay, bad boys. Everyone, my name is Kirk, and I passed the road test a few months ago. Thanks to Smart Drive Test, I passed the road test on the second time, but I was also nervous. And yes, nerves do get the best of us sometimes. So it's important to practice, and then you can overcome those nerves that are going to drive you crazy on your road test. But they keep us alive and know that we're alive, so you're doing well. Farah, yeah, me either. So I have to do my road test practice with a paid instructor. You don't, yeah, unfortunately, you don't have a vehicle. $1,500 of protective gear. No, and that's good that you did buy the protective gear, Jim. I'm glad to hear that. Excellent. Singh, should we help the person if any crash occur on the road by calling ambulance, or should we call police first? Singh, essentially you just dial 911 and they will ask you what happened, whether it's a crash, whether you need ambulance or police. Oftentimes if you do call for an ambulance, the police will come as well and investigate the crash and the cause of the crash and direct traffic and those types of things, okay? So it's a good idea to ask the examiner as well. There we go. Okay, so excellent. So we're just going to wrap up here for tonight. Thank you everybody for showing up. Congratulations to all the smart drivers in the last week who have passed the road test. Good luck on those, to those smart drivers who have passed a road test. Or good luck to those smart drivers who have a road test coming up in the next week or two. And all the best with that. If you've passed a road test, be sure to head over to the Smart Drive Test website and let us know in the 100,000K campaign. And we're going to contribute money to helping people with drivers with disabilities learn how to drive and those types of things. All right. So thank you so much for that. And be sure, if you're watching on the replay, to let us know where you are in the world, and all of that helps us out. Royal Router in the U.S. and Canada, all emergency services can be accessed via 911. Correct me if Canada has a different number. No, Royal Router, you're absolutely correct. It's 911 here And in Australia, I know it's 000, and I don't know what it is in other parts of the world. So it's 911 here in North America, and it's 000 in Australia. And as well, if you're in other parts of the world and you have a different number for emergency services, leave us a comment, leave that down there, and all of that will help everybody out. So Manette is in Edmonton. Rose, you're most welcome. Andrew, thank you, Rick, for everything. Your driving tips changed my life. Excellent. Thank you so much, Andrew. Glad we could help out. And yes, it is 911 in Canada as well. So thank you, everybody, for your time. Thank you for your comments and questions. All of that does really well and helps us out, and I really appreciate it. And if you like the channel, consider subscribing, hit that thumbs up, and remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great night. Bye now.